Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are strapping in for a really specific and honestly quite emotional dive into Japanese horse racing, late 1980s. But we're going to skip the dominant champions for a minute. We're focusing on a story that, well, it just goes way beyond the stats. The magnetic, beautiful, and ultimately, tragic tale of Gold Shitchi. So our mission today really is to get past the basic results and figure out why this horse is still remembered so vividly. He didn't sweep the big prizes, but he's an icon. We need to understand why the fans loved him so much, not really for the wins, but for this kind of unique mix of charisma, just incredible looks, and a fate that turned, well, pretty cruel. It's racing drama, basically, packed into one horse.
And you absolutely have to start with how he looked. I mean, that defined him from day one. Just picture a horse so perfect, like he seemed to step right out of painting, a really rich chestnut, but the markings were unforgettable. 4 perfect white socks high up his legs and this huge, dramatic white blaze right down his face. His breeding was solid Vice Regal out of Italian City, which gave him that city name.
Right, and the sources jump on this immediately. They mentioned this, like, almost unbelievable joke going around back then, that if Gold Shitchi wasn't fast enough, well, they could just donate him to Tokyo Disneyland as a showpiece.
Yeah. And that detail's so important because it just sets up the whole tension, doesn't it? These huge expectations based purely on how he looked. This gorgeous superstar meant for greatness, but maybe, the racing gods had something else, something much sadder planned. And when you look at his whole generation, Gold Shitchi is kind of the anchor for the drama of what people later called the tragic generation.
That sets up a powerful theme, that idea of immense promise leading to heartbreak. We need to track that. But let's be clear, he wasn't just a pretty face. When he started running as a 2-year-old, he actually delivered, right?
Oh, absolutely. That's why the story hit so hard initially. He didn't waste any time proving he had talent to match the looks. He won the Hanshin Sansai Stakes. That was the big juvenile championship race in Western Japan. And winning a Group 1, well, that's the peak anywhere in the world.
And the impact of that win, it went beyond just the horse, didn't it?
Totally life-changing for his team, that G1 victory. It was the very first major title for both his jockey, Masaru Honda, and his trainer, Izumi Shimizu. When a young horse gives that kind of breakthrough to his people, it just tells you he's got something special, that mix of talent and, I guess, timing.
So he finishes his 2-year-old year, not just as like a hopeful prospect, but confirmed elite. He added the Sapporo Stakes win too, and ended up sharing the best 2-year-old colt award with another horse, Mary Nice.
So going into that crucial 3-year-old season, the Triple Crown year, everyone's watching the beautiful Chestnut.
Exactly. And this is where the story kind of pivots from triumph towards, well, struggle. Expectations are sky high. But his prep run for the first classic, the Satsuki Show, it was surprisingly off. He finished 6th in the Spring Stakes. And the public, you know how they are, they started writing him off.
Okay, hold on. Let's unpack that. Co-champion juvenile, then 6th. Why the drop in confidence? Was it just that one race, or is that whole generation of colts just insanely deep? It was, probably a bit of both, to be honest. The competition was fierce. We're talking a crop that produced legends, even if tragically short-lived ones. But yeah, that 6th place finish really hurt his odds. He goes into the Satsuki Show. Think of it like Japan's 2,000 guineas as the 11th choice, out of 20 horses.
Right. And here's where it gets really interesting. The public kind of dismissed him. The handsome horse. But he clearly hadn't dismissed himself.
Not one bit. He ran, arguably, the race of his life up to that point. Battled like crazy, stormed home for this totally unexpected, shocking 2nd place. He proved, whatever the odds or the media said, he had the class and the heart to face the absolute best. Didn't win, sure, but he earned massive respect that day.
And that consistency throughout the whole classic series, that seems to be the defining thing about his career, maybe even more than a single win would have been.
Totally agree. Think about the pressure, the physical toll of the Japanese Triple Crown. After the Satsuki Show, he goes to the Japanese Derby, the really big one, finishes 4th. Highly respectable. Then, in the autumn, the Kika Show, their St. Leger, the long-distance test, runner-up, again.
That's the painful part for you, listening to this.
Yeah.
3 Triple Crown legs, and he goes 2nd, 4th, 2nd, always on the board, always competing at the top level.
Yeah.
But never quite getting that defining classic win. The perpetual runner-up, but with undeniable star quality.
It creates this, beautiful but agonizing story, doesn't it? He showed his quality again and again, showed up every time, yet that ultimate prize just slipped away. Always just a neck or a length short of, immortality, which only makes that fan connection deeper, I think.
Okay, so moving into his 4-year-old season, The competition, and it only gets tougher. New stars are coming up. The whole landscape changes for Gold Shinchi. This is where the wins really start to dry up, right?
Yeah, this is the sort of painful shift from superstar prospect to, well, a solid older horse, but maybe just slightly outmatched. He started struggling against the new talent, most notably the emerging legend Tamamo Cross. The sources mention their clash in the Naru Akinen. Gold Shichi lost, and it kind of signaled a changing of the guard. The public's attention was moving on.
What's interesting, though, is even when he wasn't winning, he was still right there, a factor in those tough, older horse races.
He was. Across 7 starts as an older horse, he never got back to the winner's circle. It kind of confirms his peak was probably those 2- and 3-year-old seasons. But he was still hitting the board in Group 2s, like 3rd in the Kyoto Daishoten, another 3rd in the Sankei Osaka High. This wasn't a horse who just fell apart. He was just running against giants, historical titans, and coming up a little short.
So the end of his racing career was maybe quieter compared to that flashy start. Retired after the Takarazuka Kinen at age 5. But the real heartbreak of his story, it seems, only really begins after the racing stopped.
Right, and this transition is so important because it connects his racing personality to what happened next. The plan for retirement was, well, noble, retrain him as a show horse, maybe a riding horse, but Gold Shichi was a deeply spirited, restless animal. His fiery nature, the same intensity that probably drove him to those near misses in the classics, it just stopped him from settling into the quiet life on a farm.
I think we need to pause on that. The sources suggest his charisma, his intensity, it actually worked against him in retirement. He was just too much horse for the paddock life.
Exactly. He wasn't built for calm. He was this high-strung athlete used to pressure, adrenaline. That fire inside him made him difficult to handle when the stakes were low. He couldn't really relax. And that restlessness, well, it made him vulnerable to accidents. Oh. Always moving, always on edge.
And that leads right to the tragic end. While he was out in the pasture, just 6 years old, trying to adjust to life off the track, he suffered a catastrophic fracture, a really severe one.
It was devastatingly quick. Nothing could be done. No way to save him. Gold Shichi had to be euthanized, May 2nd, 1990. And 6 years old, that's just far, far too young for a horse with his quality to be gone.
And this personal tragedy is what really cements his place, because it wasn't just him. This is why that whole group, his whole cohort, is remembered with such sadness.
This is the wider picture, the tragic generation. Gold Shichi's short, heartbreaking life kind of mirrored the fates of some of his best rivals. Think about Sakura Star O, the horse who actually beat him in the Satsuki show, died young after a racing accident. Material, who finished 3rd behind them in that same race, also died way too soon from an injury.
So it wasn't just a tough year, it became this sort of unforgettable moment in Japanese sports memory. A whole group of incredibly talented horses just swept away too soon. The pressure, the bad luck, the sheer volatility, it all just came together to define them.
It created this really powerful collective memory. They were the group with all the talent in the world, but maybe cursed by bad luck and cruel timing. And Gold Shichi, being the most beautiful, the most charismatic, he became the symbol of all that lost potential.
So what does it all mean for his legacy? When you look back at the late 80s, you've got the incredible endurance and glory of Oguri Cap. Huge public fame, lasted longer. You've got the rugged power of Tamamo Cross. Gold Shichi didn't have the longevity of Oguri Cap or maybe the raw consistency of Tamamo Cross.
But he had something neither of them quite matched. That dramatic, almost mythical charisma. Fans remember him for the heart he showed when he was the 11th choice, for his absolute beauty and for the fact he was always right there in those Triple Crown races. His legacy isn't about the glory he won, it's almost about the glory he was cheated out of.
He was this horse of contradictions, wasn't he? Too beautiful to fail, but didn't win the classics. Hugely talented, but seemed perpetually unlucky. Deeply loved, but gone way too soon. Maybe partly because of the very fire that made him great. His story, and the story of his generation, it just embodies the raw, unpredictable drama of racing.
Yeah, his story really reminds us that, okay, history remembers the winners, but people often cherish the near winners, the ones who capture the heart.
The horses who sweep everything, stand tall for years, they get the history books, the statues built on victories. But why is it often the beautiful, almost their ones, the ones who represent that bittersweet drama of potential not quite fulfilled, the ones whose stories feel kind of unfair? Why do they often hold such a lasting, cherished place in the hearts of fans? That's maybe something to think about, the difference between statistical champs and true cultural legends.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, Please like and subscribe for more. Check out our other videos for more stories you might enjoy.